Hey guys, this is Zach from Start Abroad. Today we're going to be comparing the Portugal and Spain digital nomad visas across a number of different factors so you can figure out which visa is right for you. One thing to keep in mind when you're considering the difference between these two visas is that these are moving targets. There's always rule changes from the governments or different consulates. Things are just always changing. It's a pretty fluid environment, and so keep an eye on things that might have changed in the meantime before you make your application, or feel free to reach out to us at Start Abroad, www.startabroad.com. We're keeping an eye on these things, and so we would love to help you out. So today we're going to be comparing the Portuguese and Spanish digital nomad visa options across 4 different criteria. The first one is the length of time you're allowed to stay in the country. The second one is the red tape involved in getting the visa. The third is the criteria, how difficult is it to get the visa. And the fourth is the tax benefits that you're going to achieve by getting either of these visas. There are actually 3 different visas we're talking about here. There's the Spain long-term digital nomad visa, and then Portugal has 2. So Portugal has a short-term digital nomad visa, which is good for up to 180 days, half a year. And then there is the long-term digital nomad visa in Portugal, which can be renewed for up to 5 years, similar to the Spanish digital nomad visa. All 3 of these visas allow you to travel throughout the European Union, and you can bring dependents on any of the visas. Obviously, the key difference is going to be how long you can stay in the country legally, and there's also different requirements to being rewarded the visas. Here at Start Abroad, we are international relocation specialists. Our whole goal is to make your move abroad go as smoothly as possible. If you're interested in that type of content, please subscribe to our channel, and so you're going to be getting updates whenever we release new videos. Thanks. So here we're going to be talking about the long-term Portugal and Spanish digital nomad visas. Really good news is with either of those visas, you're allowed to stay in Spain or Portugal for up to 5 years with renewals. That's going to allow you to achieve permanent residency and potentially citizenship beyond that if that's what you're interested in. So both the long-term Portugal and Spain digital nomad visas are exactly what you're looking for if you're very confident that you want to live in either of those countries for the long term. One thing to note, in order to be eligible to retain your visa, you're going to need to spend at least 6 months out of every year in that country. So if you get the Spain or Portugal digital nomad visa, the long-term one, in order to be able to renew the following year, you're going to need to demonstrate that you've spent at least half the year in that country. Okay, great. So who wins on length of stay for the Portugal and Spain long-term digital nomad visa? Obviously, it's a tie. Both of them allow you to spend up to 5 years in the country, and they're both pathways to permanent residency. You have to spend 6 months out of the year in either country. Both are great options, so it's a tie on that account. The next category is red tape. What are the things that are going to stand in your way from getting this visa? Let's start here. Neither country makes it especially easy to get the visa. Honestly, there's just a lot of red tape. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's constantly changing rules. And so I wouldn't say either are particularly straightforward. The Portuguese short-term digital nomad visa stay is actually designed to be much easier to get, but of course, there's limitations in how long you can be in the country, and therefore for who it's for. There are 2 main differences between the Portuguese and Spanish long-term digital nomad visas that actually make it more difficult to get the Portuguese long-term digital nomad visa. Those are the requirements to apply for the visa in your country of residency, and that you need a long-term rental agreement as part of the application. Let me explain. It's not necessarily straightforward. Let me explain. Whereas with Spain, you can either apply from your country of residency or from within Spain through an online portal. Portugal requires that you apply for the long-term digital nomad visa from your country of residency. So even if you've been living abroad for a long time, if you have not established residency, you're going to need to return to your home country, assuming it's the US or Canada, to make the application itself. So that's expensive, that's a huge pain in the butt. You're going to need to give them your passport when you go, so you aren't able to leave right away. So that just complicates things and often makes things more expensive. And you need a year-long lease as part of the application process, basically to demonstrate, yes, I'm going to be in the country for this period of time. The challenge is there's a sequencing issue. So you need to submit your application generally about 4 months before you're going to be approved and you're all taken care of with your in-person visit, which means that you're going to need to go to Portugal, secure a long-term lease, go back, do your in-person application in your country of residence, let's say the US, then you're going to wait, until you get approved before you can go to Portugal and complete your last step, which is an in-person meeting. So that means that now you're paying for an empty apartment for at least several months during the process. Not only is that quite inconvenient, that's expensive, and so there's just a lot of extra hoops that you're going to have to jump through to get the Portuguese Digital Nomad Visa relative to the Spanish long-term Digital Nomad Visa, even though neither are particularly straightforward to get. Okay, so who's the winner on red tape? To me, it's pretty clear that it's Spain. Portugal's requirement that you have a year-long lease and that you apply from your country of residence just throws a bunch of complications into the works, and it's going to become more expensive. So definitely leaning towards Spain on this one. So now let's move to the next category. How difficult is it to get one of these visas? What all is involved? Actually, there's more similarities than differences between the two visas. With either the Spain or Portugal long-term digital nomad visa, you cannot make your income from a company within the country that you've gotten the visa from. So if you have the long-term Portugal digital nomad visa, you cannot be making income from a job that you have in Portugal. Same with Spain, and so you're going to need a remote job. You're going to need to be earning your income from outside the country. The good news is that there's no restriction on the type of industry or company you can work for, as long as the income comes from abroad. Both countries are going to require you to demonstrate that you have health insurance. The idea there is they don't want you to become a drain on their national healthcare system. Both countries are going to require you to demonstrate that you have a clean criminal history. Normally that's an apostilled FBI background check. And last, you're going to need a letter from your employer stating that you are allowed to work remotely. So they don't want you to go through the rigmarole and for them to grant you a visa just to find out, oh, your boss didn't know you were moving abroad and now you got to move back. And as I had mentioned, in both countries, in order to maintain your visa, you're going to need to demonstrate that you've spent at least 6 months out of the year, every year of the visa in that country. Okay, so let's get to requirement differences. The big difference in terms of requirements is the income requirement. In Portugal, you're going to need to demonstrate that you make at least 4 times the national minimum wage, which in 2023 means you're going to need to show that you've made at least 3,040 euros per month over the 3 months prior to your application. That comes out to 9,120 euros in total for the 3 months that you're demonstrating that you've met that requirement. If you're bringing any dependents, of course that amount's going to be higher. If you're bringing a spouse, you should anticipate having an additional 50% on top of the base requirement. And if you're bringing any additional dependents, children for instance, you're going to need to add an additional 30% on top of the total amount per month per dependent. In Spain, the income requirement is actually much easier to achieve. So in Spain, you need to demonstrate that you're making at least 2 times the national minimum wage, which, as of the recording of this video, was about 2,334 euros per month. That might change by the end of March. Adding a dependent will still be more expensive, but the rules are slightly different than in Portugal. So if you're going to add 1 dependent, so let's say your spouse, you need to add 75% of that total amount per month. And then if you're going to add children, it's an additional 25% on top of the total amount per month per dependent. Okay, so who's the winner for the income requirement between Spain and Portugal when it comes to their long-term digital nomad visas? I think it's pretty clear. It's Spain. The minimum threshold is much lower than in Portugal, which makes it much more accessible for more people. Okay, great. That brings us to our final category, which is tax implications of either the Portugal or Spanish digital nomad visa. Thus far, everything's been tilting towards Spain. A lot of wonderful things about Spain. I love Spain. On taxes, we're actually going to go the other way, and that's largely because of the non-habitual residency tax program. Under the NHR tax scheme, if you're a new resident, which is the last 10 years, all of your foreign income is exempt from income tax. There is a 10% tax on foreign pensions, but that's actually very reasonable. And even if you were working actually within Portugal, if you qualify for what's considered a high value profession, you're only taxed at a flat rate of 20% on all your income. And as I had mentioned, that lasts for 10 years. So that's actually a pretty incredible tax benefit. Spain is a different story. So with Spain, you're actually taxed on worldwide income. So that's actually a big hit right there. There is one thing that helps a little bit in Spain, which is called the Beckham Law. So those who qualify for the Beckham Law are required to pay a flat 24% tax on all income up to 600,000 euros. And the Beckham Law only applies for 5 years. So even that small benefit you get, it's only going to last for 5 years, whereas the NHR lasts for 10 years. Okay, so who's the winner on taxes? Well, I've already spoiled it. Sorry for not giving you a spoiler warning. It's very clearly Portugal. The non-habitual residency tax scheme is one of the best tax benefits in the world for people moving abroad. Great, so there you have it. That's a quick overview of the differences between Spain and Portugal's long-term digital nomad visas. Both are great options, both are wonderful countries. Architecture, culture, food, lower cost of living, access to medical care. Still fairly close to the US and Canada without huge time zone differences. There's a lot to love about either. Overall, I recommend that you go to both, you explore, figure out which one's the right cultural fit for you. I personally lean a little bit more to Portugal's digital nomad visa simply because of the tax benefits. Actually, that really adds up over a 10-year period. But I don't think you can go wrong with Spain's digital nomad visa either. If you have any questions or you'd like to learn more, please reach out to us at Start Abroad, www.startabroad.com, or email me at info@startabroad.com. We're standing by and ready to help. Our whole goal is to take care of the details so that you can live your adventure. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much.